Greetings Exiles, I'm Raziel, and today I'm just going to wrap up my Siege Ballista Hierophant with a few little tidbits of information. First of all, Headhunter and Inspired Learning are fun to use on this build, but we have so much power available to us already that I feel like there are better upgrades to get than Headhunter and Inspired Learning. For example, one could get a double corrupted Cyclopean coil which hit dexterity twice, which I can't imagine would cost more than a Headhunter, and then you'd have like 27% increased dexterity on your belt. In addition to that, you could upgrade your rings to have elemental damage with attacks and, opal rings and whatnot, and get insane amount of damage boosts. I was looking in Path of Building and I was able to get 10% more damage per ring if I got really good rings, so that's something to consider. Another thing I've been trying out is Mirage Archer setups. Since we aren't really dealing damage ourselves, I usually forget to use this attack, but basically the concept here is the Mirage Archer still does damage even if we have Ancestral Bond. So you would just use this attack, whatever it may be. If you had a Tornado Shot enchant, you could use Tornado Shot, or some sort of extra skill in here to just clear little trash mobs and whatnot. At the end it just didn't feel very necessary, so using the Cold Snap setup in here is probably just gonna be fine. Next, through some discussions with some of the people who asked me questions about the build, I did come up with some tankiness solutions. For example, if you weren't alternating Inspired Learning, you might want to take a few points out of the build and pick up Phase Acro. And then there's a pretty simple way to sacrifice some damage and get quite a bit more physical damage reduction, and that is to use Transcendent Flesh. This is a tempered flesh, so it doesn't have the mod, but Transcendent Flesh gives you 1% physical damage reduction per 10 strength. That's allocated in the radius, and then it removes that strength. So basically, if we picked up these nodes here, we'd end up with about 12% physical damage reduction for a couple of points, which ends up being quite nice, especially considering the fact that we are already using endurance charges through a pretty easy to sustain method. So you would spec these nodes here, and then you would grab stamina and endurance, and that would pretty much give you about 30 to 40% physical damage reduction depending on any other factors, and that is insane. So that is an option which doesn't cost us too much damage and is pretty easy to set up. Next, my Maraketh Jewel. Since I've got pretty crazy dexterity gear all around and I'm a decently high level, I was able to hit 1400 dexterity with very little from the jewel. So I ended up fiddling around with some other jewels. Right now I'm using a Brutal Restraint, which gives me 5% increased dexterity node, 20 dexterity node, and then it just has a crazy amount of attack and cast speed on the other nodes. So, play around with your Maraketh Jewel. You don't necessarily need a lot of dexterity from it, especially at high levels. Another cool jewel that isn't too expensive and becomes more available as the league progresses is Emperor's Cunning. This gives us 6% increased dexterity without the drawbacks of Brawn. And it makes our character a little bit bigger, because why not? Obviously there's also Emperor's Mastery, but Emperor's Mastery is typically monopolized by one person in a league, and that person can decide to charge whatever they want for it. So if you can get your hands on an Emperor's Mastery, then that is also a pretty insane option. Other than that, not really much else has changed. I did try to level it one more time, but what would happen is I'd get to about 30% and then I'd get bored and do some bosses and do some delving and stuff like that, and then I would die a couple of times and it would be reset. Anyway, in the background is a Legion fight that I did without the headhunter on purpose, just to see how far it could get. And it is pretty good at the fight, but I was kind of blocked by my own incompetence with the fight. So you could probably get quite a bit more than I did, but you know, I'm just not wired for that fight or something, I don't know. I need more practice in it, and it's pretty expensive to practice in that fight. Anyway, that about sums up where this build landed up. If you've taken it further or you've done something different, please let me know. It's always interesting to see where other people have taken this build. And that is pretty much it. I'm working on a few other little builds here and there at the moment. Right now I'm trying to delve with the Herald of Agony, and it's working alright. I'll probably post some sort of video on that in the coming days. Anyway, that is all for the Siege Ballista Hierophant. I'd like to thank you for watching, good luck, and stay juicy.
my sword!